Well, happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Connecting MKE, Downtown Plan 2040. It's the request for qualifications informational meeting on our urban design services. I hope that you're having a great day and hope you have great plans to be outside this weekend. So we're just going to do a self-introduction of our panelists, and I could just ask whoever is, if you can mute your mic when you're not talking, that would be really great. We won't have any feedback then. But we've got 4 panelists today who are going to be presenting information. Myself, Beth Weirick, I serve as the CEO for Milwaukee Downtown Bid 21.
Hi everyone, I'm Kyle Gast. I'm a senior planner with the City of Milwaukee and the project manager for the downtown plan.
And I'm Tanya Fonseca, the long-range planning manager with the city.
And my name is Scott Stengy. I'm the procurement and compliance manager for the Department of City Development.
Thank you, panelists. So just a quick overview of the Zoom meeting today. We do want to let everybody know that we are recording this meeting and we will share it with you in a link afterward, and it will also be on the city's website page where you found the RFQ. If we could ask everybody to please go in and update where your name is to include your name and your company and your organization, that will really help us understand who's present on the call. And then if you can mute yourself during the call, we'd really appreciate it. Throughout the presentation, please feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat. And then at the end of the presentation, we will open it up for verbal Q&A and discussion. And the more questions we can have answered today, the less work we'll give to Scott at the back end. So thank you. So once again, I'm Beth Weirick, and I serve as the CEO of Milwaukee Downtown Bid 21, this beautiful downtown. So who is Milwaukee Downtown? Well, we are a business improvement district in the heart of downtown Milwaukee, and we are funded by our commercial property owners, approximately 500 of them. So Milwaukee Downtown is extremely focused on connectivity on a variety of levels, of course, socially, culturally, and economically. We're very focused on connecting downtown Milwaukee within its own boundaries, but also extending beyond its boundaries to be certain to connect with all of our surrounding greater downtown neighborhoods, the entire city, and of course, the region. So by the numbers, just to give you some perspective of Bid 21 boundaries, we had pre-COVID, and we're cheering for it to be back at this number, over 90,000 employees in downtown Milwaukee. And since 2010, that's been over a 12% increase. And we are very pleased that over 30% of all jobs within the city of Milwaukee are located within downtown Milwaukee. The International Downtown Association several years ago did a job density analysis, and Milwaukee ranked very high with 112 jobs per acre. So, and that's downtown Milwaukee again. And then another great stat is that 31% of downtown's workforce lives in or within a mile of downtown Milwaukee. We have over 2,500 businesses that are located within the Bid 21 boundaries, over 32,000 downtown residents, and that continues to grow. Our student population is roughly 67,000. And one of my favorite value propositions that I like to tell people is that although downtown Milwaukee only represents 3.5% of the city's entire landmass, we produce over 22% of the city's total property tax base. So, a decade in review for us. We all know that downtown Milwaukee is booming with development. We added over 3 million square feet of new office space. And just a note of interest, our central business district vacancy rate in Q1 of 2021 was 18.5%. We know that moving forward, we'll continue to see more adaptive reuse. We had over 1 million square feet of office space that has been repurposed for new uses. And we've had over 8,500 new apartment units. And of note, 11% of those new units are non-market rate. We've added over 2,800 new rooms in the last decade, and tourism spending in Milwaukee County continues to do very well, other than, of course, COVID. We had $3.7 billion in tourism sales in 2019. And in downtown Milwaukee alone, our numbers reveal over $200 million in sales in our entertainment, arts, and cultural institutions. We've had over $6.5 billion invested in completed or under construction and proposed private and public development projects in downtown Milwaukee, and that number continues to grow. Of course, we have many Fortune 500 and 1,000 companies in downtown Milwaukee with global headquarters. We are, of course, thrilled to welcome Milwaukee Tool to downtown Milwaukee. And of course, we continue to be focused on retention initiatives as well as recruitment for new investment and employers. We just wanted to touch a little bit on what we've been doing since March of 2020 in response to COVID-19. First of all, we are an organization that is very well connected with a group called the International Downtown Associations, and it's peer organizations across the globe that we are able to share best practices with, and that we are able to learn from their best practices as well. And it's been a very useful tool for us as we've been pivoting through COVID-19. As many other organizations and companies did during COVID-19, we reallocated our resources to support a variety of initiatives to elevate downtown Milwaukee in people's minds and to stay engaged. One of those initiatives was working with the City of Milwaukee in implementing what we call an active streets program, which allowed our restaurants to bring additional seating outside, as we knew that that was something that really helped to make our consumers feel a lot more safe. So we pivoted our resources to build that kit of parts, if you will, that helped to create those outdoor dining room areas. We also redistributed our resources. We manage very many in-person large gathering events, if you will, and like many other organizations, we pivoted from in-person events to virtual events, but we also put a huge focus on updating all of our contact sheets on our retailers, our restaurateurs, and our arts and cultural institutions to be able to let our consumer know how they could still have the connection to the community during COVID. We developed safety protocols, sanitation protocols. Our public service ambassadors and clean sweep ambassadors had a very large focus on sanitizing high touch surface areas. We also installed code of conduct signage outside throughout all of downtown Milwaukee, as well as the installation of hand sanitizing stations. We altered our message in our downtown branding from "Make it downtown" to "Make it back," really focusing on all the reasons that people should come downtown and how they could do it safely. We also developed very effective and impactful COVID-19 resource pages that were really beneficial to the business community as well as to our consumers. Throughout all of this, we continued to reach out and survey our consumers so we have better understandings of their feelings of safety and their behaviors during COVID, as well as our employers. Right now, we're happy to say that we're trending higher than most cities, most peer cities anyways, with about 27% of our workforce back at the office in downtown Milwaukee. And we see that number continuing to increase through projections throughout the end of the year. We've also been very focused on activation of our vacant storefront windows to make sure the consumers and visitors that are out and about and are walking feel connected and don't see any empty spots that are not warm and welcoming. So we're all very pleased, and we know that this continues to change nearly daily, but our phase 6 order is scheduled to expire on June 1st. And businesses and events are still encouraged by the city to uphold common sense practices to the best of their ability as it relates to social distancing, hand sanitizing, and of course, keeping hands washed and cleaned and masking inside where possible. We are excited that over 38% of eligible Milwaukee adults have completed their vaccination series. And at this time, the mask ordinance for the city of Milwaukee is still in effect. So with that, I'll hand it over to Kyle Gast.
Hi, everyone. Kyle Gast with the City of Milwaukee Department of City Development. I'm a senior planner and the project manager of the downtown plan update. And we're just so excited to have you all here. We're so excited to get started on this project. Just quickly to put the downtown plan in context, I know many of you are familiar with our planning in Milwaukee, and maybe some are less familiar. But the downtown plan is one of 14 area plans. The city's comprehensive plan covers the entire city. It's broken into 14 areas, and each of these areas has an area plan, which together creates the city's comprehensive plan. And we use these plans for a number of things, often to inform decisions about land use, zoning, infrastructure, and development. The plans are also useful in helping to guide the city's policies and programs, and also identifying key projects to focus on, both public and private investment. And these plans are generally intended to look forward about 20 years and to be updated every 10 years or so. So the 2010 downtown plan, or the current downtown plan, is one of those 14 area plans. It was adopted by the Common Council back in 2010. And so now it's more than 10 years old now, and it is due for an update. So the 2010 plan, at the highest level, it laid out policies and strategies really organized around 4 themes. It had 8 sub areas with more location specific recommendations. And it also identified 8 catalytic projects. And just real quickly, the 4 themes that were laid out in the 2010 plan, this is not necessarily something we're gonna update exactly. We will be having a new vision, but those four themes, one was a connected downtown, which focused on transportation and streets, as well as creating kind of connections between various areas of activity by filling in gaps that may have existed. It's a sense of place, which really focused on the overall character of downtown, the quality of the public spaces, and really the design of the buildings that help to shape those spaces. Density and intensity was focused mostly on kind of land use policies, but really with the desire to increase the number of people living and working in downtown, as well as visitors. And a distinct downtown center, which emphasized the need to really create a strong walkable core in the center of downtown, which would really be imageable as our central core and help us compete globally as a city. So the district chapter broke down the downtown area into 7 sub areas and provided recommendations for each, I think 8, for each area. And on the right, you can see some of the diagrams and mapping that were included in those chapters. I'll note that while it's identified on this map, the historic Third Ward is not part of the downtown planning area, as it has its own plan, the Third Ward area plan. So it is identified on this map, but it wasn't one of those sub areas. And finally, the 2010 plan identified 8 catalytic projects to focus on. Some of these have been implemented and are complete or are well underway, others less so. So since 2010, what's happened? Well, as Beth described very effectively, there's been a lot of growth. There's been tremendous growth in downtown, and including the streetcar, a new NBA arena, countless renovations of beautiful historic buildings, new office towers, hotels, apartment buildings. It goes on and on. This next slide shows kind of a map that the downtown bid helped put together with really kind of an inventory of all these great investments that have occurred over the past decade plus. This is available on the bids website. They also have like an interactive mapping exercise where you can kind of click on each individual project. So this is really exciting. This is a lot of momentum. So now as we turn the page on the decade, we're entering into the next decade of development. We're coming out of a pandemic. A lot of things have changed since the last plan. So what's next? What are the issues today that we need to address that maybe we didn't see back in 2010? What are the opportunities for tomorrow that we can leverage? What should our downtown look like in 2040? And who should it be for? For who? That's another element that we're kind of zooming in on, is that kind of equity piece. So to answer some of these questions, the Downtown Business Improvement District and the city have partnered now for this effort. So we are launching what we're calling Connecting MKE, Downtown Plan 2040. So this update to the plan will help to guide the physical, social, and economic development of the area over the next 10 to 20 years. Like all of our plans, it will be our guide to zoning and land use decisions and identify some key catalytic projects we want to implement over the next decade or more. But more than that, I think with this plan especially, we really want to focus a lot of attention on the public realm, which is touched on in most plans. Sometimes it's mixed throughout the chapters, but we really want to come out of this with a clearly defined public realm plan for improving our streets and public spaces. And because those are really, the public realm is a place we all share. And we think that's really important to kind of helping to further transform our city into the future. And another thing we want to emphasize really is the importance of equity and inclusion. It's really important that everyone feels welcome downtown, and we want every Milwaukeean to feel that this is their downtown, the place that they can be proud of, the place that they can identify with. And so we're going to be looking at everything through the lens of equity as we go about this project. So I mentioned, so here's the map of our planning area. It's unchanged since 2010. Much of what we typically think of as downtown is within the plan area. It also includes some areas that maybe aren't considered downtown as much, like the hillside area and the Haymarket Square area. And this is kind of the boundary we're sticking with. As I noted before, the third ward is not part of the planning area because they have their own plan. And I mentioned all of the, well, we can go to the next slide. So that was the planning area, but we really want to target our engagement on a broader area, which would include the city as a whole, really, but specifically those near downtown areas. So this map shows the boundary of the MKE United planning area. The MKE United is an ongoing effort of the last several years to create a shared and inclusive vision for the greater downtown area. And so our project, Connecting MKE, will really build on the MKE United effort and place a great emphasis on connecting downtown, both within downtown and the surrounding neighborhoods. And I mentioned before all of the investment, and Beth mentioned it, that's happened over the past 10 years plus in downtown, and it really is remarkable. But there are some areas, immediately adjacent to downtown that have not seen that level of investment, have not benefited as much from this growth. And we want to make sure to extend that momentum out, into the neighborhoods in an equitable way. So one last point I want to touch on before I get into the deliverables about this process is really about collaboration. So we're not necessarily looking for a consultant to prepare the entire plan because we just don't have the resources to do that. So we're going to be really collaborating with you, the city, the bid, the urban design consultant, as well as an equity and engagement consultant that we're bringing on board to really help make sure that we can authentically do some real engagement to those surrounding areas. Part of that will be what we're calling the community council. This is a new idea that we're piloting. The urban design consultant won't have a direct role in facilitating that, but they certainly want to be aware of what's being discussed. And that's really going to be a group of representative residents from around downtown and surrounding neighborhoods that will meet once before each phase of the project to really kind of discuss some of those key issues around equity and inclusion. We'll also have a project leadership team. So in addition to the downtown bid and DCD, we're expecting heavy involvement from our Department of Public Works, because if we don't have them on board, they're really the ones that really implement our public realm. Milwaukee County, both transit, parks, and economic development, the Westtown Association, the Historic King Drive, and of course, MKE United, the ongoing effort I mentioned earlier. We'll also have a plan advisory group, which generally consists of kind of elected officials, but also key stakeholders in the downtown, as well as some of the implementers of the recommendations that can come out of it. So I'll touch briefly on the deliverables. They are all described in the RFQ. But first, I thought, kind of technical support for DCD and Bid 21 and other partners as needed to help facilitate input and develop the plan update document. So this is sort of a catch-all. As I said, we're looking for a collaborator. We're looking for somebody to be part of the team that's able to kind of review documents, to contribute. We're not just looking for an illustrator. We do want to give the consultant the opportunity to contribute, potentially give us precedent images for certain surveys, things like that. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for them to be part of the team going forward. One key element that we would like some assistance with is preparation and facilitation of a public visioning workshop or multiple workshops earlier on in the process. That's really that kind of public brainstorm, right? Yet to determine what that looks like, we would work with the consultant to figure out the best way to roll that out, but some sort of visioning workshop open to the public. Also, there'll be some internal design workshops where it'll be, probably DCD and the bid and DPW in a room with the consultant, kind of hashing out what are these recommendations going to be, what are they going to look like, as well as, along the way, there might be some alternative scenarios for various projects. Maybe not all of them, but certainly there'll be some that could be A or B, and we'll want help with creating some sketches on that to help, with surveys and things like that to get opinion. And then, drawings. We really want somebody to illustrate the plan. So there'll be progress drawings along the way, and in the end, some final drawings, both of, kind of general concepts, planning concepts, as well as our catalytic projects, and also some supporting information for that. We may even get to the level, if there are certain projects, asking for cost opinions or short narrative descriptions of certain ideas. So next slide. I touched on those final drawings. We really do want to see in the qualification packages some great examples of what your firm may be capable of doing. And what it really boils down to is maps and diagrams to illustrate kind of the overall concepts of the plan. We don't know what those are going to be yet, but we just want you on board. We have a lot of mapping capability in-house as well. But again, it'll be a collaboration to figure out how to best communicate some of these ideas. And then the catalytic project images, we're really thinking at this point to boil it down into streets, public spaces, and development. So really we see, and we can go to the next slide, Tanya. So here's some examples. I just threw in some examples of type of things we're talking about. So here are some examples, kind of like that area-wide diagramming, whether that's about mobility or about another topic. And then for the, for the catalytic projects, street redesign. So this is an image from the NACDO guide. These can be incredibly helpful in kind of distilling out the key idea of what we're looking to do and rebuild the street. But of course, there's sections, there's photorealistic rendering, there's other opportunities for that communication. And again, we'll work through that as we go along. Next slide. Again, same idea with public spaces. Some of you in the room are probably very familiar with some of these images that I'm showing. But we would love to have a set of visionary ideas for our public spaces. And next, and finally, development. They could be diagrammatic like this, or there could be more architecture to it. But again, we're going to try to illustrate the type of things that zoning can regulate, like massing and height. Next. Okay, so I hope that gave you all kind of a snapshot of what we're looking for from a consultant. Real quickly about the process, it really is going to be segmented in 4 phases. This is shown linearly. I know there'll be some back and forth, but phase 1 is really just kind of engaging on issues, opportunities, goals, objectives, that sort of thing. Phase 2 is really where we see that public brainstorming session, that community visioning session happening, where it's kind of like throwing everything at the wall. We're also going to have some public engagement software that we're going to deploy for the first time on this project that we think can go a long way in facilitating some of that. But that kind of ideas. Phase 3, we're going to start presenting stuff to the public and getting feedback. So this is where we could see those kind of preliminary drawings start to show up. And then by phase 4, we're going to have things pretty finalized. We'll have an open house, and then we'll move into adoption. Next. And that's it. Okay. So thanks, everyone. And I'll turn it over to Tanya.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya Fonseca. I'm the Long Range Planning Manager in DCD, the Planning Division. So I'm going to walk you through some of our proposal requirements today. All of this, of course, is in the RFQ, but just kind of facilitating that information and discussion as we move forward. So this is an RFQ. As you saw in the document, we have a really robust scope in mind. And of course, there is some flexibility, once we have our consultant on board as part of the, contract negotiation, we are certainly happy to kind of revisit that scope and tweak things. But we, given kind of our team structure, as you heard, and it being so collaborative, really had a lot of specifics in mind. So we're really, just asking for qual packages from all of you and that cover letter and project understanding to explain, how your approach would be integrated with ours, and that you have understanding of our downtown and interest in what we're asking for. Of course, we want information about your firm and experience, and that includes all sub-consultants as well. Documentation of past experience and qualifications. We're asking for that one to really highly profile one project in the most detail, and then 2 additional projects as well. If there are sub-consultants, we're asking that projects be inclusive of them as well. And then we are asking for 1 full sample of a project that relates to this. Scott will later on talk about attachments, because we realize emailing large attachments might be complex. So stay tuned for that. We're also asking for information about the staffing. We're asking, including at least a half-page resume for each staff person. We really want to know about the full team that will be around the table, even your more entry-level, highly talented staff. We want to know about them in the proposal as well. And then, kind of how you propose to allocate those hours as it's detailed in the scope as that work pertains to you. Also asking for rates naturally, and then reimbursable expenses, and then your SBE participation, which Scott will talk a little bit more about as well shortly. In regards to COVID-19, of course, the day we released this publicly was when more information surfaced from the CDC about next steps. So, you know, we're all obviously one day at a time, you know, learning together as to what our future will hold, but there's still a lot of unknowns. And so, you know, we appreciate absolutely your flexibility and your patience because, you know, as we wrote the scope, very much most of the meetings were in mind to be virtual with the hope that perhaps eventually some would be in person, but we just don't know. And we still don't know, even though the moving forward health order will expire in June 1st, the protocols for us are still not crystal clear. And so we do ask that, and this will be in the addendum, that there be a brief narrative in the staffing section or the rate section would be fine to kind of account for how you would factor in some in-person meetings with the budget that we have. We don't anticipate any additional resources. So we will, you know, ask that whoever we partner with on this be, you know, mindful of that, and that we naturally will be as well, and that things may have to shift as a result of whatever is before us. In terms of the evaluation criteria, we have 10 categories. Of course, we're really looking for, you know, demonstrated knowledge of our downtown Milwaukee and the surrounding neighborhoods, and some of those dynamics and, you know, discussions that are underway. Naturally, some understanding of zoning, local government structure, public-private partnerships, and other aspects of the project. Although this is formally a city plan, it won't purely just be the city implementing, right? It is very collaborative. So just an understanding of how things really work and get done would be great. A demonstration of expertise in creating design concepts and scenarios for catalytic sites. And we really, you know, do want that there be some level of constructability in mind. We're not asking for engineers to be on the team necessarily, but just an understanding of that whatever we are outlining in this plan, we truly do want it to be possible and implementable, which is why we're pulling in so many partners to ensure that through the way. We'll be definitely very excited to take a look at the graphics that you submit as part of your examples, because that is something that we're very passionate about, having a highly visual, dynamic plan. We do have Water Street Creative on board who will be helping with the document as a whole in collaboration with us. So that isn't something that we rely on this consultant to do. However, we do really want, you know, fabulous visuals that will integrate into that we can use throughout the public process, but also the final documents. A demonstrated ability and commitment of increasing equity in design of the public realm. This is something that we find really absolutely critical in general as a society, but in our downtown. Certainly there have been some past things that have taken place in our downtown that have shown us that we really need to take a closer look at equity. And we really want to be, you know, a leader in that. Demonstrated contribution to a multidisciplinary design process, including planning, urban design, graphic communication, civil and multimodal transportation, engineering, and landscape architecture. Again, I want to stress we're not asking for, you know, all of these different professionals to be on board, but just an understanding that our team will very much be collaborative and multidisciplinary, and, you know, having knowledge and experience with that will be great. Furthermore, experience developing preliminary cost opinions and estimates, and potentially even phasing for some of the design concepts to support us in our budgeting processes will be really important and helpful. And we understand that, you know, these you know, scenarios that we're having you help us with won't be final, right? They will be conceptual because, you know, there will be further design to happen. But for our processes, it's really helpful to have some understanding of what that level of investment can be or will be. That way we can budget it, and we can also support this with our tax increment financing moving forward. We're also, looking for an understanding of infrastructure improvements in general, as well as funding and grants for that and implementation considerations in general. Finally, project staff qualifications are, of course, very important, as well as hourly rates and reimbursables. And then last, but certainly not the least, your SBE business participation, which Scott will outline shortly.
Thank you, Tanya. Again, my name is Scott Stange, and I am the Procurement and Compliance Manager for the Department of City Development. And there are a few things here. I just have a couple slides that just want to go over a few things to highlight in the RFQ. The first slide talks about contracting requirements, and and Tanya had alluded to this at the end of the scoring, is an 18% SBE participation goal. So we're looking for firms to provide a narrative of meaningful participation for firms that are currently certified with the City of Milwaukee as a small business enterprise. The link on the screen, which is also a link in the RFQ, is a path for you to go and search for teams that are certified by the City of Milwaukee. I would ask and caution you as well, when you do the searching, just confirm that their certification is still current. Firms that would be included in your RFQ that would go towards that goal would need to be currently certified. Every once in a while, a firm's SBE certification may lapse. If they're not currently certified at that time, then they would not count towards the SBE goal. So just be mindful of that as you put your team together, when you have conversations with firms about being part of the team and filling the role of the SBE participation goal. Just ensure that they have their certification up to date. In the RFQ, there is a document that's called Designation of Confidential and Proprietary Information Form. While this is a collaborative effort with private and public entities, the documents that you would be submitting as part of your response, as well as the contract that would come from this process, would be subject to public records. So when you build your response, do know that anything that's in that proposal could be subject to public records. What the Designation of Confidential and Proprietary Information Form does is it allows you to designate certain things within your proposal that you would like the city to keep confidential. It is then our pledge to keep those confidential up until like a court order that would demand us to reveal it. But other than that, we would do our best to keep that confidential. If there are certain specific things within your proposal, please list them individually. We ask that you don't just say my whole proposal is confidential and proprietary. It needs to be a little bit more specific than that. And then our expectation as the consultant in the performance of this services on this contract and in all of our contracts is to follow any and all local, state, and federal rules and regulations as they pertain to the equal employment opportunities, which is also found in the RFQ requirements in the RFQ document. And then finally, I touched upon this a little bit. Upon final review and award of the contract, the chosen team or the chosen contractor would end up executing a contract with the Redevelopment Authority of the City of Milwaukee. And that would be something that I would handle directly with the company with input from the collaboration team here. Some important dates. These are also all in the RFQ, but they're worth highlighting. In addition to the Q&A session that'll be following shortly, if there are questions that come up after this after this informational meeting, feel free to email them to me at the email on the screen. I will then work with the team and work on getting an answer back to you as soon as possible. Any question and answers that are substantive in nature would then be gathered and put into an addendum, and that addendum would be posted at the same website that the RFP is posted, and that would be posted by June 4th, by the end of the day on June 4th. So please check back at that time to see if there's any addendum. That'll give you enough time to react and respond and tweak accordingly your submittals. And of course, then the submittal deadline, that's June 10th. That's at 11 a.m. And that's when the qualifications packages are due. That's 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. As Tanya indicated, we're still a little unsure what our office's situation is going to be like. So we are currently only accepting qualification packages on this RFQ through email. The email is on the screen. It's also in the RFQ. I would caution you to not wait to the last minute to submit the email. With things taking a little time in the interweb of space, it's a good idea to build in a little bit of time before you hit that send button for the email to get through and received by the city. It needs to be received by the city by 11 a.m. 11:01 would be too late. And then as far as Tanya had mentioned with the sample, we are asking for a full sample. So it's important to note that the maximum size for an email to that email address is 50 megs. So please be mindful of that as you prepare to submit your document or documents, I should say, as a response to this RFQ. And if you need to split up the sample from your qualifications package, that's fine. Just indicate that in one of the two emails that there's a second email that goes along with it. And then finally, in the review process, if the team decides that further information would be needed from the top scoring firms, we would conduct interviews. They would be done remotely, very similar to what's happening right now. And those would happen either on June 25th or June 28th. So please mark those dates off on your calendar and alert your team members as well that they would need to be available for those interviews. And then our team in turn will do its best to give you the most lead time of either A, informing you that you would be asked to be part of the interview, or B, letting you know that you are not part of the shortlist and an interview would not be necessary. So again, just to recap the important dates here, June 1st, that's the day for questions. That's the deadline for questions. So you can ask any questions after this up to that date. We'll be posting an addendum on June 4th. So please come back and check that website for that addendum. June 10th is when the qualification packages are due. And then again, just mark off your calendars for June 25th and 28th for possible interviews. And that concludes my part of the presentation.
Great. So we'd like to open it up to questions, and folks are welcome to use the chat, but you can also use your mic and even your camera if you'd like.
Hi, Tanya, this is Larry. I have a question. Can you hear me okay?
A little, you're a little choppy, Larry.
All right, I'll say it, and if it needs to go in chat, I'll do that. In terms of the relation of urban design projects to equity, inclusion, and economic development, to what, hypothetically, I can imagine equity projects having to do with neighborhood safety or education that can be supported through urban design. I can also imagine projects that are really urban design oriented that have some ability to address equity and economic development. Is this project more about the latter or the former? Or don't we know yet? Was the question clear enough?
Hi, Larry. I think I understand. I'm hearing an echo now, so I'm going to try and mute you. Okay. And Kyle, feel free to jump in on this as well. We are certainly exploring what that means, but we are looking, we chose to brand this plan as Connecting MKE because we feel very strongly about improving those connections from downtown to the neighborhoods physically, but also in other ways, right? In terms of businesses and, public space and interaction and other opportunities in downtown. In my eyes anyway, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, I think that really does truly include also looking at equity within public space design specifically, and what we can do to really make downtown, the most accessible and vibrant and safe for all community members. Because I think as what we're learning as a society is that public space is not always designed as such, and we really want to be mindful and be leaders in that field. Kyle, is there anything you'd like to add?
Not particularly, but I think, you put it well. And I think part of it is just every activity we do nowadays needs to be thought of through the lens of equity, especially something like urban design, which impacts so many people in so many different ways. And I think we're gonna continue as a group to explore that. We're gonna do some really intentional engagement to try to further understand what that means in terms of urban design. And we're really hoping that the people that we choose to partner on this are also interested in exploring that issue and are committed to it.
And if I could too, Kyle and Tanya, throughout our conversation and updating this downtown plan, we talk consistently about people and policy and potential changes that could happen in the way we engage people in our community, and possibly look at change in policy moving forward. And maybe an example could be, how do we incentivize affordable housing or a percentage of an adaptive reuse building to include affordable housing? So I'm just throwing that out there as a suggestion, but definitely we want this to influence the way people are impacted and look at creativity around possible policy changes.
I'm seeing a couple questions in the chat, so just want to circle to those. One question is in regards to Dropbox links and whether or not they can be sent via email. Scott, will we accept those?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good suggestion in the sense of the size of the email capacity. We have successfully accepted Dropbox link. Dropbox there, right? Yeah. Now I'm a little tongue-tied. Dropbox link has been accepted and used successfully in the past. So yes, that would be something that we would accept.
And we have another question here in regards to our public engagement consultant and who we're working with. So that actually is a great question. For engagement in general, is very collaborative. DCD and Bid 21 will be leading it in general. However, we are seeking a consultant for equity and engagement, and that is a separate RFQ that is invite only. So that is happening simultaneously. It was released just the day after this one was released. So that process is also underway to select that consultant. So we don't know yet, but we're excited to see.
Hi, this is Kevin with Kubala Washako. May I ask a question?
Of course, yes, thank you.
Yeah, the RFQ presents as a unique collaboration with city staff and the bid and, large number of stakeholders. There's, we count up 22 meetings. And as you've acknowledged, this is such an opportunity and there's much to be done. Could you, pardon me if this is such a vague question, but could you just give us some more of the nuance as to the role of the design consultant? At one point, somebody said, the design consultant's not creating the plan. So what's with respect to the design consultant, really the best form of collaboration? What does that look like? And what are the key roles that the design consultant is playing? And again, pardon me if that's a vague question, but just some color commentary would be nice.
I can take the first stab at that, Tanya, if you want. And I would say the design consultant will have a very active role in creating the plan. So maybe that's was a little misleading if that was me who said that. It's likely that DCD staff will likely be writing the plan, and organizing it with, in collaboration with the bid. We do hope, we value the talents in this meeting and others that may submit qualifications for this. So we really do want the consultant to be involved in helping us kind of come up with the big ideas, help us figure out how to communicate that. And we'd hope that they'd be very interested and excited to do that. The big thing that we probably don't have the capacity to do in-house is just those really elegant graphics and the conceptual design of some of these public spaces. And it's not quite certain what that may look like and what level of detail we can actually get to, but it's about, it's really about communicating those ideas graphically in ways that because of our skill sets or time restraints, the city just can't do. But certainly we would see the urban design consultant as an integral partner in all facets of the plan, but specifically those illustrations, the catalytic projects that I identified, which would be streets, public spaces, and development opportunities, which again that might evolve slightly, but I think that what we threw out there is probably a good estimate of the number of drawings. But then is also the kind of the bigger diagrams for the planning concepts, which are kind of yet to be determined. And we do have some capacity. The bid is working with Water Street Creative, as Tanya mentioned. I should have mentioned them as our group. They're extremely talented, so they'll be able to contribute to that as well. I hope that answered part of your question.
Yeah. Again, thanks. It's nuanced.
And in terms of the number of meetings, there are certain meetings that we would expect the urban design consultant to be actively engaged, potentially even a facilitating role. But the vast majority of them, we would mostly just ask that somebody be present. There's certain parts of the project where that effort will ramp up, specifically the public visioning workshop, as well as some of the internal workshops with city and DCD, where we kind of hash out what these things actually going to look like.
Yeah. Thanks, Kyle.
Kyle, I was thinking too, another good example is just when we're working through the entire community engagement process and using social pinpoint and working with our design consultant and creating those images that the public can respond to, for example, like in a visual preference survey, right? We would look to our design consultant to work with us on providing sort of those options that will create those responses from our community engagement.
Seeing here, another question that came in from Cassie that says, this is great and important project for the city. However, the budgeted fee for the role of the consultant does not appear to commensurate with the level of effort being requested. How open is DCD to a consultant team proposing an alternate scope that fits within the budget and delivers the most value for the available dollars? So Yeah, thank you for your comment, Cassie. Very appreciated. I think one thing that we are very mindful of is that we do have, limited resources, and that we really are, working to write the vast majority of the plan as DCD staff with support from BID and others. So the urban design consultant really is there as the, designer for the project. And certainly, for conceptual designs, we realize that there will be some limitations with the funding. We also have tried to be as mindful as possible in regards to meeting attendance and making sure that it's clear in the RFQ which meetings we're actually requiring the consultant to attend and fully support with effort versus just simply attending, or attendance being optional, because we know we don't have the funding, unfortunately, to have that consultant plugged in through and through. But we also feel strongly that that just isn't necessary, given the folks around the table for a collaboration. So we are hoping to receive proposals that do match with those deliverables that we're asking. I think if anybody else has anything to say in regards to an alternate scope, I welcome it. Kyle or Beth?
Well, I would say, reading your chat again, Cassie. We are open to some negotiation, but our kind of dollar amount is what we have. So we're not going to be able to, there's no bucket where we can go get more funding for an extra couple drawings or for an extra few meetings. We're kind of limited in our funding. So if there has to be negotiation, then some of the work product would be the only thing available to negotiate with. But I do hope that we can find some agreement on moving forward that looks somewhat similar to the scope we've laid out. But we won't be able to increase the budget.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and Kyle, just to dovetail off what you just shared, again, we did write the scope out, but we are, nothing is set in stone. We are absolutely willing to negotiate, once we have a consultant in hand on changing scope. We are open to suggestions and ideas, absolutely.
Yeah. Sarah put a question in the chat. How important is it to develop proposed designs that are rooted in market reality? And then, is a market analysis expected? So at this time, we are not proposing a market analysis to be part of the project. There's so many unknowns right now that it's hard to even know what the value would be there. But yes, I would say we want to have some level of market reality to the proposals and some level of constructability. There's also kind of, when we're talking about public realm stuff, especially when it comes to things impacting streets, there's going to have to be an understanding with our Department of Public Works that what we propose they'll actually build, that we can actually feasibly do. So yes, we are developing a plan that we want to implement. So we all kind of have to make compromises rooted in reality in that regard. So we do expect things to be aspirational, but certainly rooted in reality.
Great. Any other final questions? We're at 3:01 otherwise. So just want to thank you so much for all of your time and your interest, and don't hesitate to reach out to Scott with any questions. And, we really look forward to your proposals. I know it seems like maybe we're asking for a lot, but we are, willing to be very creative and, figure things out so we can partner with with one of you. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon and weekend, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.